Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanachhalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupaha Kada Mahyam Dadati Supadantikam Vandeham Shri Guroho Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sachivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parjana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitam He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namaste Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Shivanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Pancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyeva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale Shankaradhanasa Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishthaya Nanta Swami Namne Namaste Saraswati Gauravani Pracharani Nirvishesham Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langeti Girim Yat Kripatamaham Mande Shri Gurum Tarinam Paramanam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram Hari Om Tat Sat. Hare Krishna. So, first of all, let me start by wishing you a very happy New Year, a Vedic New Year. So today is the Chaitra Shukla Pratipada, the first day of the month of Chaitra, which is the first month of the Hindu calendar, the traditional Vedic calendar. While in different parts of India, there are different days which are considered as New Year. This particular Tithi is more aligned with the traditional Vedic beginning of the year. So, of course, celebrated by different names in different parts of the country, as Gudi Padwa, as Ugadi, and a few other names. So, wishing you all a very happy, prosperous New Year and wonderful growth in Krishna consciousness. So, again, an auspicious day for us to discuss the glories of the Lord. We are continuing our journey on the first chapter of the Madhya Lila of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, which, as you may recollect, is an overview of the Sesha Lila. Sesha Lila is the second half, part 2 of the Lord's life. The Adi Lila covered part 1, the first 24 years. And the Shesh Lila is part 2, which is covered in Madhya and Anta Lila. But the first couple of chapters of Madhya Lila kind of give an overview of the entire Shesh Lila. So in this chapter, mostly is a Madhya Lila overview, which is the 6 years of the Lord's traveling after he took sannyas. We have already started discussing the chronological sequence of the various pastimes during this period, and we are going to continue that today. Each of these pastimes has been referred to by the Lord, by Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami in a very brief manner. So except for one or two where a little bit more details are there, most of them are going to be very brief references. So please again do tolerate me, like what I mentioned last time. Some of you may not be able to uh, especially those who are not familiar with the pastimes may not be able to relate to the name and the incidents. But again, a reminder that this chapter and the next chapter, at least the part that we are discussing, is more like an index. This is what we'll be discussing. Sometimes before we read a book, we go to the table of contents and we go through the names of the chapters. So this chapter is something like that. This. I'm just giving in chronological order, broadly giving the flow of the pastimes of the Lord as they are covered in Madhya and Lila. So we already began in the last class the discussion of how the Lord, after having taken sannyas, came to Jagannath Puri. And then after coming to Jagannath Puri, he decided that I want to tour South India. And in the pretext of travel to South India, the Lord actually extensively preached across various parts of the southern India. He went all the way to the southernmost tip, Cape Comorin. And we discussed few of these places which are mentioned here, prominent places that the Lord visited. We spoke about Kurma Kshetra, we spoke about Jiyada Narsingha, we spoke about Ahobal Narsingha, we spoke about how he met Ramanand Rai on the banks of the Godavari, how we visited Tirupati, how we visited Ahobal Narsingha and the Nava Narsinghas around there, how we then landed up in Sri Rangam, that holy place which is the capital of the Sri Vaishnavas, danced in front of Lord Ranganath, the beautiful deity of Garbhodakshay Vishnu, and how, by the invitation of Trimala Bhatta, who was the priest there and who was one of the prominent members of the Sri Vaishnava community and who was a great scholar, he invited the Lord, and the Lord gave his blessing to that family by agreeing to stay in their home for the Chaturmasya period. Because generally in the Vedic culture during and this was more true in those days because the sannyasis would travel on foot. So that restriction may not be observed by today's sannyasis because there is barely any walking on foot. Because they have to go from US to India to UAE to UK. And obviously, walking is not a practical option. So during the 4 months, sannyasis those who were itinerant preachers were expected to be based in one place and be absorbed in austerity and sadhana rather than traveling. This had various reasons, but we're not going to that now. So the Lord decided to stay in Sri Rangam at the house of Trimala Bhatta. So he spent his time there and gave so much association. Sri Rangam is so beautified. Lord Chaitanya stayed there not for a day, 2 or a week, 3 months. And that home is still there. The place in the room where Lord Chaitanya stayed is still. So we discussed that. So at the end of the Chaturmasya period, when the Lord departed from Sri Rangam, he continued to travel through South India. At that time, he met a very great devotee whose name is Paramananda Puri. Now we'll be discussing some pastimes about Paramananda Puri later on. But he is a senior of Lord Chaitanya, in the sense that he is the god brother of his spiritual master. So there were a few great devotees, Paramananda Puri, Sri Rangapuri, and a few others, who were actually god brothers of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Guru Ishwara Puri. But because they all knew that Lord Chaitanya is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they had a mood of service towards the Lord and they wanted always to associate with the Lord. So in these southern India travels, the Lord met some of them, like Paramananda Puri and Sri Rangapuri, which we'll discuss about also. Paramananda Puri is a very, very great. In fact, there is the home and the well of Paramananda Puri, Jagannath Puri. So later we'll discuss. He met him in South India, but later Paramanand Puri moved along with a few other devotees, Govinda and others, and Kashishwar to Jagannath Puri. But it's briefly mentioned that as he was traveling, he met Paramananda Puri and had wonderful interaction there. Then there is a very, very interesting episode which happened, which Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami mentioned, which is of the deliverance of Lord Chaitanya's servant Krishnadas. So if you recollect, I don't know whether I mentioned this, but when Lord Chaitanya went on the southern India trip, the devotees insisted that the Lord should not go alone. He should have a travel assistant. The Lord was very detached. He says, what do I need travel assistant for? I don't need a servant. I don't need a secretary. I just want to be by myself. He said, no, Lord, you must take. You know why? Because, you repeatedly go into ecstasy. And when you go into ecstasy, you have no awareness of the external situations. You throw your kamandalu somewhere, you throw your, whatever one or two spare cloths that you have somewhere, you'll not know, and then you'll go and maybe you will do something which is embarrassing. You need somebody to, control you, in these moments when you're overwhelmed. And the Lord said, yeah, okay, fine. So they recommended this particular devotee whose name is Krishnadas. And this is a very interesting episode. This is quite a detailed episode, but it's briefly mentioned here. We'll discuss in detail later. How he accompanied Lord Chaitanya, but at one point in his southern travels, he got attracted to a group of gypsy women of a community known as the Bhattahari. That's a very interesting episode. And how he strayed from the service of the Lord and how the Lord saved him from their clutches and delivered. So this is mentioned. It's a very sweet story. We'll get to that in the subsequent chapters. Then Lord Chaitanya had discussions with various parties as he traveled in the south, some, with Brahmanas. And to a group of Brahmanas who were very addicted to chanting Lord Ram's name, he also told them that you can chant Ram's name, but you should also chant Krishna's name. And he explained the glories of the names of Krishna. So that philosophical conversation we will also discuss. Later, just like the Lord had met Paramananda Puri, he also met another great senior devotee, Guru's contemporary, Sri Rangapuri. So that episode is mentioned. Both of them, Paramananda Puri, Sri Rangapuri, eventually came to Jagannath Puri and remained in the association of the Lord. These are all very, very intimate, great associates. Then there's a very special devotee whose name is mentioned. His name is Ramadas. Now, this is a very interesting episode, so I'm not going to go into the details now. But this Ramadas is a very great devotee of Lord Ramchandra. And he was so attached to Lord Ramchandra, but he was in very great pain. He was in very great pain, and the reason that he was in a great pain is because he couldn't tolerate that in the Ramayana it is mentioned that Ravana kidnapped Sita. He would cry and cry and cry. How come Ravana was able to touch Mother Sita? So he was very disturbed. So Lord Chaitanya tried to console him that, no, it is not like this. How can Mother Sita be touched? The pure spiritual potency, how she can ever be touched by a demon like Ravana? No material personality can touch the transcendental body of the Lord's console. So he was trying to explaining, but he was not being consoled because he did not have any shastric proof. He thought he's just being consoled by Lord Chaitanya. So anyway, eventually the Lord tried, and after that he left. And the story will continue later, and I'll come to that in a few verses because that's how it flows. So I'll come to that. So he had that conversation. This is very, very wonderful devotee Ramdas. Very genuine, very humble, very simple. Then the Lord met a community of devotees known as the Tattvavadis. These Tattvavadis are from another Vaishnava Sampradaya, but the Lord found that these devotees were a little proud of their heritage, their understanding, and their understanding wasn't the highest understanding. which actually the Lord himself had come to preach. So the Lord, seeing that they are proud, and because they were treating other Vaishnavas as inferior, the Lord actually debated with them and defeated them. They are Vaishnavas, defeated in the sense he made them understand that what they thought is the highest is not the highest. So that's a detailed conversation. We will go to that also. In South India, the Lord visited many, many temples. Of course, we all know in South India, there are so many beautiful temples. There are nice temples in North and South. But the wonderful thing about South India is that many of these temples are grand. Relative to South, the North India temples are much smaller. South Indian temples sometimes, they are like huge, massive palaces with courtyards and gates and surrounding walls, almost like a city, mini town. So some prominent temples that the Lord visited are mentioned. The temples of Anantadev, these are all Vishnu temples. Purushottam, Sri Janardana, Padmanabh Swami, this is in Trivandrum, and Vasudev. So he visited all these temples. So many of these, most holy places across southern India also the Lord Chaitanya has personally visited. Then the Lord went to a particular place where it is said the Lord delivered the Saptatala trees. This is a very, very interesting pastime. I want to mention it very briefly now. We'll discuss in detail later. Actually, there's not much detail. It's actually a very brief reference, but I can mention it now that if you remember in Ramayana, for those who are familiar with the Ramayana, there are these 7 Tala trees, which Lord Ramchandra, to demonstrate how capable he is, because Sugriva was not so sure that Ram is powerful enough to challenge and defeat Vali. So he took an arrow, he shot an arrow, one arrow pierced 7 tal trees one after another, flew around and came back and went into his quiver. So those 7 tal trees, which are half cut, were still lying there from the time of Lord Ram's pastimes, 500 years ago. The Sapta Tala trees. Wonderful pilgrimage place to visit. So they said the Lord visited that particular place and I think if I remember correctly, he embraced those 7 Tal trees. Maybe they must have been great devotees. Nothing much is mentioned in detail, but they must have been very special devotees or something who have been waiting for the Lord to come back. Lord Rama cut them and Lord Chaitanya came back, who's Lord Ram also. Came back, he embraced, and it is said as soon as the Lord touched these 7 Tala trees, disappeared. Just disappeared. So today, there is no trace of these 7 Tala trees because 500 years ago, until 500 years ago, they were standing. The Lord embraced, they all just disappeared. So it is said he delivered those 7 Tala trees. Some very auspicious, great souls who came in that particular form. The Lord delivered. Then it is said the Lord visited the Setubandha Rameshwar and he visited the very famous temple of Lord Shiva, who's known as Rameshwar. So in Ramayana, again, Lord Ramchandra had worshipped Lord Shiva there in the form of Rameshwara. While some people feel that Rameshwara means the Lord of Ram, Lord Shiva doesn't interpret his name like that. Lord Shiva himself interprets the name Rameshwara as Ramaha Ishwaraha Yasya Saha. That Ram, whose Lord is Ram, that is Lord Shiva. So Lord Ram is my Lord. Even though Ram comes and worships him, Lord Shiva is in the mood that he is my boss. I am Das. So the Lord came there. Lord Shiva and Lord Hari, they have a very wonderful, very sweet relationship. Very difficult for us conditioned souls to understand and appreciate. That's why we should always be respectful to Lord Shiva, never criticize or judge him. They are very, very intimate. And Lord Shiva is a great devotee of Lord Hari. And many times in past times, even Lord Hari plays the role of a devotee of Lord Shiva, even though in Tattva, Lord Hari is superior. So this is very sweet. Anyway, so he went to Rameshwar. There are many details which are not mentioned here. We will discuss them when we come to those relevant chapters. Just one thing is mentioned, that at Rameshwar, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu happened to come across a copy of Kurma Puran. It's a very special Puran. It's a very ancient old copy of Kurma Puran. And when he saw that particular copy of Kurma Puran, when he was flipping through it, he came across one palm leaf where the verse mentioned that in Lord Ramchandra's pastime, the Sita which was kidnapped by Ravana was not the original Sita, but a Maya Sita, a Chaya Sita. It was a shadow representation of Sita. So when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu saw that verse, he immediately remembered his meeting with Ramdas Vipra. Yes, that devotee is still suffering, thinking that how Sita was touched. So he wanted proof, even though I told him, so here is the proof from Kurma Puran. So the Lord took that leaf from the rest of the Kurma Puran. He said, sorry, but I need to keep this. I have important business. In those days, there was no, Xerox shop, photocopier, phone to take snap and send on WhatsApp. I need to keep this. So he took that page from Kurma Puran. He tore it, it is said. Although that book was very, very old. And then later, much later, when he went back on the way back, after all his South India trip, on the way back, he again passed to the place where Ramdas was staying, and then he showed him that particular leaf and mitigated his. So it's a very, very sweet episode. See, this is how the Lord actually feels so much. The Lord remembered Ramdas Vipra and made it a point to do so much to relieve his anxiety. So amazing how much the Lord is affectionate to his devotees. It is said in the South India travels, Lord Chaitanya also came across, the Kurma Puran verse was one, he came across two other very, very important Vaishnava works, pre-existing by great devotees. One is the Brahma Samhita, which we recite, which was original prayers, which was composed by Lord Brahma at the time of creation. Actually, there are 100 chapters in the original Brahma Samhita, but today only fifth chapter exists. All other chapters have been lost. And this particular fifth chapter of the Brahma Samhita was found by Lord Chaitanya in the Adi Keshava temple. We have been fortunate, we visited the Adi Keshava temple. In fact, most of these other temples also, Janardhan, Padmanabh, Vasudev, I have been fortunate to visit where Lord Chaitanya has been. So these are all very, very wonderful holy places. So that particular book, Brahma Samhita, and there's another particular book which is known as Krishna Karanamrit. If I'm not wrong, it is written by Bilva Mangal Thakur, another very, very great devotee in the Mathura Vrindavan region. He came eventually and settled there. So it's a very wonderful story. We'll discuss about these personalities later. And Lord Chaitanya very much liked these works because these works gave solid credence to the Krishna consciousness, Braj Bhakti, the Gaudiya Vaishnava Siddhanta that Lord Chaitanya was preaching. So he took a copy of these books and he traveled with these copies back to Jagannath Puri after completing his South India tour. So in this manner, with this brief description, it is said that the Lord kind of concluded his South India trip and then he headed back to Jagannath. So it was roughly around 2 years that the Lord was traveling across South India. That's how I remember. It's not mentioned here in the verse, but it's around 2 years. The Lord preached extensively. Actually, it is said that wherever he went, he would encourage the people to chant the holy names. He would debate, he would dance in ecstasy. whenever he would visit these temples that I mentioned, he would not just go and do darshan, take darshan. Of course, he would take darshan because he was playing the role of a devotee. But the Lord would beautifully do dancing Sankirtan in front of these deities. For example, even when he went to Rameshwar, he was doing dancing Sankirtan there. When he would go to Padmanabh Swami, he would be doing dances. So he would attract all the souls who would have come there. And imagine, how wonderful it must have been to have darshan of Lord Chaitanya personally dancing to the singing of the holy names of the Lord. To have that darshan, to have the good fortune of having that darshan. Amazing. All those who were able to take that darshan, receive that very, very special blessing. So Lord Chaitanya eventually came back to Jagannath Puri after a period of roughly 2 years. So when he returned, they said as soon as he returned, he came just in time for the Snana Yatra festival. Yeah? You all know what is the Snana Yatra festival? Anyone? What is the Snana Yatra festival of Lord Jagannath?
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Yes, Madhya.
Wedding of Lord Jagannath.
Wedding.
Yes.
Wedding, huh? Wedding with whom? Actually, the Snana Yatra festival is considered the Lord Jagannath's birthday. It's considered Lord Jagannath's birthday. The Lord Jagannath, along with Subhadra and Baladev, are bathed water on the Snana Yatra day. And we perform these pastimes. Of course, in Malaysia, we have Sri Jagannath Mandir, so we perform the Snana Yatra. And it is said after the Lord is bathed on the Snana Yatra day, the Lord falls sick because of being drenched too much in water. And then the Lord has this Anavasara period for some days where the Lord goes into seclusion and the devotees cannot take his darshan. He's given medicines and special diet. And then eventually the Lord comes out and gives public darshan and comes out on the Ratha for the Rath Yatra after a few days. So this is the yearly celebration, Snana Yatra, Anavasara period, and then followed by Rath Yatra. The Rath Yatra is when the Lord travels from the Shri Mandir to Gundicha Mandir, and then eventually he comes back. And there are other beautiful festivals along the process, such as Hera Panchami and so on. So the Lord reached just in time when the Snana Yatra was going on. And immediately after Snana Yatra, darshan closed. No darshan of Jagannath. The Lord had just come back after 2 years. He was longing to take darshan of Lord Jagannath, but suddenly Lord Jagannath, no more darshan available. Of course, he's the Supreme Lord. He can just barge in and take darshan. But he's playing the role of a devotee. So Lord Chaitanya was feeling deep separation from Jagannath. He was feeling so much separation that I am in Puri, but I cannot take darshan of Jagannath. So he was feeling so much separation that Lord Chaitanya said, I cannot stay in Jagannath Puri. I am just feeling too much. I will die out of the separation. So I need to take darshan, but I cannot barge into the Lord's private chamber to take darshan while he is in the Anavasar period. So I will go to this place known as Alalanath. So Alalanath is also a very special place. We have been there. There's a very beautiful deity of Krishna, which is considered non-different from Jagannath. So it is a deity of Krishna, but it is a deity where the Lord is in 4 arms. It looks like a deity of Vishnu, Narayan. So anyway, I'm not going to go into the story now, how this Krishna is 4-armed, but this is something to do with the Ras Lila, which I have mentioned briefly earlier, how Lord Krishna manifests a 4-armed form during the last Lila. I think we discussed in the last or the last to last class. So it's a very, very special place, Alarnath. So Lord Chaitanya, whenever the Lord would be in the Anavasar period, would travel to Alarnath. It's a very, very special tirtha. And there are many, many special. Anyway, I'll not go into that, but there are some things very, very special there, and we will discuss that when we come to those relevant chapters. So the Lord would take darshan, and he would have some sense of relief because he felt Jagannath's association by being at Alarnath and serving the Lord in Alarnath. So the Lord was in Alarnath for a few days. Meanwhile, knowing that Rath Yatra is coming, all the devotees of Bengal, remember, the devotees of Bengal wanted to take Lord Chaitanya's association. They all started traveling towards Jagannath. So the news reached Lord Chaitanya. The devotees are telling Lord Chaitanya, "Oh Lord, you are in Alarnath here, but your devotees are coming to meet you. And they are going to Jagannath Puri because they are thinking you will be there, but you are here." So all these devotees arrived in Jagannath Puri, headed by Nityananda Prabhu, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. So Lord Chaitanya is not where is Lord Chaitanya? Oh, he is gone to Alarnath because he is feeling so much separation. So Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya and Nityananda Prabhu went to Alarnath. Alarnath is not very far from Jagannath Puri. They went and they tried to persuade Lord Chaitanya that all these devotees have come all the way. So please, we request you, please come back to Jagannath. So finally they were persuaded, Lord Chaitanya was persuaded and the Lord agreed to come back to Jagannath Puri, but it is said that Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami said he was feeling too much separation. Even when he came back, he was feeling so much separation. It is said day and night he was feeling separation from Lord Jagannath. Chaitanya Charitamrita says the lamentation, the spiritual lamentation of Lord Chaitanya knew no limits. So these deep moods of separation, the ecstasies of separation, as we discussed in earlier, we cannot actually comprehend and imagine this. These are all very, very deep, profound states of ecstasies. So many devotees like this, not only from Bengal, it is said different parts of Bengal, not just from Navadvip, but from different parts of Bengal, appeared in the sense they traveled to Jagannath Puri and they all gathered there. And they would all come and surround Lord Chaitanya and they would chant, very, very loud chorus chanting. And this was one thing, since the time of his appearance, Lord Chaitanya really loved congregational chanting. So whenever the Lord would be in great distress, whenever he would hear his devotees congregationally chanting very loudly, the Lord would feel relief. So even in this situation where he was feeling so much separation from Jagannath, by hearing the devotees chant the holy names of the Lord, he would feel the presence of the Lord and he would find some pacification by experiencing the ecstasy of that Sankirtan. Another thing which is mentioned as part of the summary of the Lila is that remember that in the travel to South India, on the bank of the Godavari, the Lord had met one great governor of that region, whose name was Ramananda Rai. And the Lord had given him his association. There was wonderful discussion, which is one of the most famous discussions of Chaitanya Charitamrita. If we want to say which conversation or which discussion of the teachings of Lord Chaitanya is the most popular, there are many. There are discussions with Rupa Goswami, there are discussions with Sanatan, there are discussions with Prakashan and Saraswati, there are discussions with Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, there is discussion with Ramananda Rai, and a few others, but these are the prominent ones I have mentioned, which are covered in Chaitanya Charitamrita extensively. Philosophical dialogues. This Raya Ramananda Samvad is considered one of the most prominent because it very beautifully analyzes the science of Krishna consciousness. So when the Lord had given him his association and also taken his association, And the Lord took his association because his name was specifically recommended. The Lord. Anyway, so all those pastimes we'll discuss. The Lord had instructed Ramananda Rai, because Ramananda Rai is Vishakha Sakhi, very, very confidential associate of Srimati Radharani. So Lord Chaitanya had instructed, I'm going to go back to Puri after my South India trip is over. So you also plan now, it is time for you to join my pastimes. Enough of your governorship. Talk to your king, give your resignation, come and join me in Puri. I need my associates to discuss Hari Katha. And Sarup Damodar is there, and I also want you. I want both Lalita and Vishakha to be there. So he had instructed Ramananda Rai. So at the same time, when Lord Chaitanya had came back, I think Ramananda Rai also understood. He got the news that the Lord has returned to Puri. So so Ramananda Rai also, he spoke to the king, and he also told him that, I have done enough. I want early retirement. VRS he took. Said, thank you very much. I have other things to focus on for the rest of my life. So he resigned from his post as the governor, and he reached Jagannath Puri to stay with Lord Chaitanya. It was very, very wonderful. Lord Chaitanya was so happy to receive Ramananda Rai. And being a very, very intimate associate of Lord Chaitanya, day and night, the Lord would be absorbed in discussing very deep pastimes of Radha and Krishna with Ramananda Rai. So Sarup Damodar, Ramananda Rai, these devotees, the Lord would really, really relish discussing Harikatha. So after bestowing his mercy on Ramananda Rai, who had come to Puri, it is said Lord Chaitanya also bestowed his mercy upon Kashi Mishra. Kashi Mishra is the personality at whose home Lord Chaitanya stayed, and we'll discuss this in detail, how he came to that home. It was by the arrangement of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. It is also mentioned he met later another devotee, Pradyumna Mishra, and various other devotees. Also around the same time, Paramananda Puri, Govinda, and Kashishwar, three very close associates of the Lord, also came to Jagannath Puri to be based in Jagannath Puri and take association of Lord Chaitanya. So Paramananda Puri, we just briefly discussed how Lord Chaitanya had met Paramananda Puri. We will discuss that pastime in great detail. But just suffice to mention for now that Paramananda Puri is an incarnation of Uddhav, who's Lord Krishna's very, very dear friend. So it is not a great surprise that the Lord wanted to have very intimate association with him. Govinda, even though it's not mentioned here, just to mention very briefly, Govinda was a god brother of Lord Chaitanya, but by the instruction of Ishwara Puri, the guru of Lord Chaitanya and Govinda, Ishwara Puri had instructed Govinda that you should go to Jagannath Puri and you should perform the service of being a personal servant of Lord Chaitanya. So Govinda came to Jagannath Puri, and we'll discuss that whole episode in great detail, but just want to mention Lord Chaitanya was initially reluctant, but finally, because of his guru's order, he accepted Govinda as his servant, and Govinda performed very, very wonderful services, and there are many pastimes discussed, explained in CC with respect to his relationship with Lord Chaitanya. Another devotee, Kashishwar, he also came. So all these devotees came to Jagannath Puri. So many of these personalities whom the Lord had met at various places, both in South India and elsewhere, Ramananda Rai, Paramananda Puri, and then Govinda came from one place, Kashishwar came. So in that way, very soon after Lord Chaitanya came back from South India Yatra, all the devotees who were supposed to come to associate with the Lord arranged in such a way that they all gathered at the right place at the right time. And then the Lord met with all these devotees, Paramananda Puri, Govinda, Kashishwar, and all these other devotees, along with Sarup Damodar Goswami. And the Lord was very, very happy that all these devotees had come and that now he would get their association in Jagannath Puri. The Lord also met another very great devotee known as Sikhi Mahiti. And he also met Bhavananda Rai, who was the father of Ramananda Rai. So each of these personalities have stories behind them. We will not go into that now because it's not mentioned in detail here. These are just very brief references. So along with all the devotees of Bengal who came and all these special devotees who came, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami mentions also the devotees who are residents of Kulinagram came to see Lord Chaitanya for the first time. Now this Kulinagram is a very, very special place. And practically all the residents of Kulinagram are very great devotees and they're all devoted to Lord Chaitanya like anything. They all love him like anything. So Lord Chaitanya is very, very fond of Kulinagram. And we'll discuss that in greater detail as we progress through the Madhya Lila. Narhari Das, as well as other inhabitants of another very important place which is very dear to Lord Chaitanya, which is known as the Sri Khanda. They all came along with Shivananda Singh. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu met all of them. So in this way, after all the devotees gathered, of course, they all came and they saw the bathing ceremony of Lord Jagannath. It is said under the instructions of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they all gathered together and they washed and cleansed the Gundicha temple along with the assistance of many, many devotees. So that's also a very beautiful pastime which is discussed. Soon after the Gundicha temple, the Rath Yatra festival happened and all the devotees along with Lord Chaitanya joined this car festival ceremony. Lord Chaitanya himself danced in front of the cart of Lord Jagannath. Very, very wonderful descriptions. And after dancing in front of Lord Jagannath's cart, it is said the Lord became very tired and then he entered into a particular garden and started to take rest. Now, this is a very, very special pastime. We are now rushing through this because it's mentioned very briefly, but this is a very sweet pastime. They said Maharaj Prataparudra, the king of Orissa, whom the Lord was not giving his association, he approached the Lord at this particular place when the Lord was lying down in the Jagannath Vallabh gardens. And there's a very, very, very sweet, beautiful pastime how Maharaj Prataparudra achieved the blessings and association of Lord Chaitanya, even though earlier the Lord was reluctant to meet him. So that's again a very beautiful pastime which we'll cover in detail. So after all these festival happened, the devotees, like what we discussed, they would stay for a few months, then right from Snan Yatra, then Rath Yatra, then a few days, then finally it would be time for all these devotees to go back. And this going back of these devotees was also such a big almost like a big ceremony. Each one would come to meet Lord Chaitanya. Lord Chaitanya would spend time with them, exchange such affectionate words. And the Lord was so kind that, he would give personal instructions to each of these families. The Lord had very, very personal. See, our whole philosophy is so personal. It's a very sweet interaction. Practically everyone, the Lord would give some personal instructions. Like this, like this. So how are things with you? Okay, now you should do this, now you should do that. And the Lord was overall, he was so happy with this last few months of, having this wonderful association together, that the Lord instructed all these devotees that, oh, this is so nice. Please come here every year. Every year for Rath Yatra, all of you must come. Very happy. And this became a regular ritual, and we have discussed this earlier. For almost 20 years, this continued. After this, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami mentions one very interesting pastime, and that is at Sarvabhaum Bhattacharya's house. It is said one day, Sarvabhaum Bhattacharya invited Lord Chaitanya for lunch. And Lord Chaitanya was having prasad, and Sarvabhaum Bhattacharya's wife, she was such an expert cook. She had cooked huge feast and she had served so many items to Lord Chaitanya. And Lord Chaitanya is saying, why you are feeding me so much? How can I eat so much? Just give a little, just feeding, giving. And they were saying, oh, as Jagannath, you're eating so much. Now you are, saying you cannot, so you better eat. So Lord Chaitanya was just to make them happy, he was eating. But it is said that around that time, Sarvam Bhattacharya's son-in-law, his name is Amogha, who's the husband of the daughter of Sarvam Bhattacharya. His daughter's name is Sati, the husband of Sati, Amogha. He suddenly happened to come into the house and he saw Lord Chaitanya eating there. He saw Lord Chaitanya's plate, the banana leaf or whatever. And he saw so much food laid on it. And this Amogha was a very critical person. And he looked at the plate and looked at Lord Chaitanya and said, you're going to eat so much? You're a sannyasi. Look at how much you're eating. So he criticized Lord Chaitanya on the face, right in the presence of Sarvam Bhattacharya and his wife, and they were so upset. They were so upset. Advaitacharya's wife was so angry that, they were so fortunate to serve the Lord and the Lord was accepting their offerings, but this son-in-law was criticizing the Lord. She was so upset that she cursed her own daughter, may you become a widow. Which means she cursed, actually indirectly cursed Amogha to die. Anyway, so this is a very interesting episode and something happened after that, and Amogha was eventually delivered and he became a great devotee, but we will talk about that when that pastime comes later in Madhya Lila. So many of these pastimes happened and eventually 1 year passed. When 1 year passes, what happens? Again, it was time for Snan Yatra. Again, all the devotees from Bengal, headed by Advaitacharya, came. All Puri again became filled with the devotees of Lord Chaitanya. And as usual, the Lord was so happy to receive them. The Lord was so enthusiastic that everybody get proper accommodation. All these devotees were, given proper residential quarters. Shivananda Sen was the leader who was in charge of making sure everybody is taken care of. Lodging and boarding. So lodging, boarding requirements were taken care of. One interesting thing is mentioned that when this whole party came, the second year, along with that party, one stray dog had also joined the party. It is said across that whole travel from Bengal to Puri, this dog accompanied all these Vaishnavas traveling. Now, this passage is mentioned in great detail, so I will not give a spoiler now too much. But it is said that the dog also came to Jagannath Puri. The dog had the darshan of Lord Chaitanya, and Lord Chaitanya gave this dog his blessing, and the dog was liberated and went back to God. So more about this dog later when we discuss this pastime. So stay tuned. So dogs also have hope. So the point of this dog is that even though he by himself was nothing great, obviously what can a stray dog talk about his qualification? But just because he was close to the devotees and he received the affection and favor of the great devotees, he received the favor of Lord Chaitanya and he went back to God. So many other pastimes happened. All the devotees, it is said, they also met Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, who was on his way to Varanasi. There's a brief mention of this. And after all these devotees, they came to Jagannath Puri. They were settled very nicely and they also got the darshan and association of Lord Chaitanya. It is said not only Lord Chaitanya would do kirtan with them, he would also do water sports with them. They would go into the Indradumna lake, the Dumna Sarovar, Narendra Sarovar, and they would have various sporting pastimes. Just like Krishna would play with the Gopas, Lord Chaitanya would also play with the devotees. Water sports and sprinkling water on each other. So all those are also discussed in detail. So the Lord also, this year also, he performed the washing of the Gundicha temple very thoroughly. And again, like the previous year, the beautiful Rath Yatra festival, everybody joined, and the Lord also again danced before the cart of Lord Jagannath. So even along the way where the Ratha cart goes, all along uh, the grand road of Puri, many beautiful pastimes happened. It is said one of the things, interesting things which happened was there was a Brahmana by the name of Krishna Das. He performed a bathing ceremony for Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Very interesting. Anyway, so after the Lord and the devotees danced the Gundicha temple, again the Lord sported with his devotees in the lake. And then they all had, there was this very famous Hera Panchami festival where Lakshmi Devi comes to Gundicha temple, and because she wants to check where is Jagannath. Jagannath is missing from home. Where did he go? Jagannath has gone to meet his girlfriends in Vrindavan. So Lakshmi Devi, no wife likes that after marriage the husband is still thinking about girlfriends. So she comes, what are you doing here? Come back. So anyway, there's a sweet pastime where Lakshmi Devi comes, so that here that is known as the Hera Panchami day. So that all these devotees observed. So there are many small episodes. So these are pastimes, are actually pastimes of love. There may not be elaborate stories or plots in some of these episodes, but why these episodes are mentioned is that much of the learning in Chaitanya Charitamrita is not so much necessarily in terms of detailed plots and drama and all that, but about the nature of the sweet interaction that the Lord has with his devotees. How they speak, how they interact, what is their mood. Because Chaitanya Charitamrita goes one level deeper than the Bhagavad. Chaitanya Charitamrita goes deeper into the nature of the Vaishnava and the nature of the Lord. It talks about the inner heart of the Lord and the inner heart of the devotee in greater detail. It's not that the Bhagavad doesn't speak about it. It's in greater detail. And that's why while some of these episodes may appear as, oh, oh, he met him here, oh, he met him there, then they went here, then they went there, it may seem uneventful. But the eventful happening is in the sweet interaction of the Lord with his devotees. The sweetness is in the interaction, the sweetness we can see in the conversation and how they interact and how beautiful rasa is exchanged between the Lord and the devotees. Anyway, so to continue, I just want to make sure I mention this point. So we are not kind of wondering, what is this? Why are we discussing? He met him here, then he played in the water. So what? Yeah. Of course, then we play in the water, it doesn't make front page news. But when the Supreme Personality of Godhead plays in water with his friends, yeah, that is front page news, by the way. So it is said on Janmashtami day, Lord celebrated Janmashtami day, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself dressed himself as a cowherd boy. He put this, this rod which has to balance which has two yogurt pots on either side. Cowherd boys carry. He did that. Then he took a stick like a gopa and he would swing it around his head, a wheeling rod. So like that, Lord Chaitanya tried to enact the role of a gopa. Anyway, so all these pastimes happened, and again, just like last year, finally the Lord bade farewell to all the devotees of Gaudadesh. And after all these devotees would go, what would be the Lord's exclusive absorption? Two things, you remember. After lunch, he would associate with Haridas Thakur and Rup Sanatan. They were there. And in the evening, especially, you would have intimate association and discussions with Sarup Damodar Ramanand Rai. Very deep. So very deep hearing, chanting would happen with these intimate devotees who are always with Lord Chaitanya. Then at one point, the Lord decided that it's 9:56, right? Okay, I think I'll stop here because I think the next pastime is, I think I would not want to break it because there's a flow there. So just to mention that the next episode of the Lord's pastimes, which is given in overview, is about the Lord's decision. After these 2 years, the Lord decided that he wanted to go to Vrindavan, travel to Vrindavan. So how the Lord proceeded towards Vrindavan, what happened along the way. So there are some very interesting episodes. He passed through Bengal, what happened there. Then Ram Keli, he had beautiful episodes there. He went all the way to Kanai Natshala. So there are some very sweet pastimes. And there are some very great devotees with whom he interacted. So all those things are discussed, and we'll discuss that at an overview level the next time. So we have come to, just in case you all forget or I forget,
147, Prabhu.
Yeah. Yes. So we'll start from 148 next time. Yeah. Thank you very much. So any questions or comments?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yeah, Hare Krishna. I can hear you.
Hello.
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah, we had lost you for a few seconds. Now it's okay. You can speak.
Am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you.
Is this Tattva?
No, we are losing your voice. We hear you sometimes, we don't hear you. Can you repeat your question? Are you able to hear us, Swatiji? Can you repeat your question, or if you are unable to get your sound, you can type the question
Okay,
in the
I will
chat.
ask you. I will write.
Yeah, you write it in the chat. Meanwhile, any other question? Okay, just waiting for Swatiji to type out her question since we can't hear her. Just hold on for a minute.
No, I just want to ask Prabhuji that is that Tattvavadi community still exists because Vaishnavas
Yes. They
never.
exist. Tattvavadis exist. Tattvavadis are actually a branch
Because
of the.
Vaishnavas they always think about Lord. They don't underestimate like some Vaishnavas are inferior or superior.
They should not.
Yeah.
What should be and what is the reality is sometimes different. So these Tattvavadis were actually is a community who are followers of Madhvacharya, and they were a bit proud of their Brahminical standards and the Brahminical purity, and they were a bit more attached to their understanding of what is highest. So whenever whenever the Lord sees that his devotees have somehow developed some kind of pride, especially pride which is, of course, pride should not be there in any case, but especially pride, which is, causing them to look down upon others. God will do the needful to rectify it. So that community is there, but so they were humbled. It's always good to be humbled by the Lord, because if we are proud, we don't progress. As soon as we become proud, we actually put a brake on our own spiritual progress. So yes, the Tattvavadi is a community. I haven't personally interacted, or I don't personally know, but I know that this community is there and it still exists. Of course, this was their state at that time when Lord Chaitanya visited. I'm not saying that they're necessarily still proud. So that's not what we are saying. We are saying that at that time they had a particular attitude, and Lord Chaitanya guided them, and they rectified their mentality. That's what Chaitanya Charitamrita says.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Yeah. So pride can come for us also. Sometimes we may think, oh, I'm a great devotee, I know this, I do this, I am like this, I am like that. So just because we are Lord Chaitanya's followers doesn't mean we are humble. It means that we should be humble, because that is Lord Chaitanya's mood. But what is expected and what we actually are, there may be a gap. That is why we have to work towards bridging that gap. So many amongst us, and I'm not talking about this class, so many amongst us means amongst thousands and thousands of devotees, it's not that we are all following the mood of Lord Chaitanya perfectly. We are all conditioned, so we have a huge gap between where we are now and where we should be. But by studying Shastra, by seeing the behavior of our Guru and other advanced devotees, we continue to make an endeavor to improve the quality of our character and move closer and closer to the standard that Lord Chaitanya would want us to demonstrate. Right?
Yes. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Okay. Okay, so if there's nothing else, we will conclude. So again, a happy new year to all those who came. Happy Vedic New Year, and may Krishna bless us that we continue to glorify him, and also do sadhana in such a way that we can actually develop all these wonderful qualities that we just spoke about. And that is the measure of progress. The measure of progress is not just the years we spend doing this, but the effectiveness is seen by how we are improving both the quality and quantity of our sadhana. Not just quantity, but quality also. It means our more attachment to the holy name, more attachment to hearing, eagerness to hear, eagerness to serve, enthusiasm to serve, our faith, and also the development of our character in terms of the wonderful qualities: humility, tolerance, purity, selflessness. So many of these wonderful. Tikshava Karunika, Shruda Sarvadevina, Ajata Shatrava, Shanta Sadhava Sadhu. So let us pray to the Lord that by the next New Year, we are better than what we are today, at least by 5%. It's not, if not more. Then the year is fruitful. We may not become pure devotees by next 1 year. At least I am too far away to become, but at least 5% from where we are. Thank you. So I will see you on Saturday. Shri Chaitanya Charitamrita Jai. Samaveta Gaura Bhakta. Thank you. Haribol.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Thank you,
Prabhu. Hare Krishna.